Thank you for being in today. And we have a great show with Phil Kennard from Futurestay. But before we start, this show is really meant for short-term investors and entrepreneurs, whether you don't have an Airbnb listing right now or you're starting off in your journey. Our stories are to help inform you to better invest your time and your money so that you can really accelerate your journey into short-term rentals and have a profitable property, be able to achieve the financial goals that you set up for yourself. So thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend that you think that would benefit from listening to today's episode. Phil, thank you for coming on today.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. I love that intro because it sounds like we're going to talk about some of my favorite things to some of my favorite people.
Yeah, I know. We designed this. I launched a podcast because I remember the journey when I first started, and I wanted to provide a format for people to hear real stories of entrepreneurs that started in short-term rentals and how they scale their business. And Futurestay is such a great story, and I want to dig into that. And I also want to dig into today we're recording a podcast on April 22nd, 2025. Airbnb just dropped a big policy change about a week ago on direct bookings and how it really impacts how hosts think about building their business. There's this kind of meme about don't build on someone else's land with using the OTAs, and you're right in the heart of that conversation. So I'm really glad that you're on today and we can really explore that topic. But before we start, please maybe take 30 seconds to a minute to introduce yourself and Futurestay to the audience.
Sure, I'll do my best. I'm Phil Kennard, the founder here at Futurestay. Futurestay is a technology platform that helps rentalpreneurs succeed. Rentalpreneurs, to me, are people like myself and maybe like you that's listening. And I have 3 rentals. I don't ever have a goal of building a 100 rental portfolio. Maybe I'll get one more if my wife lets me. And I use short-term rentals as a way to build some personal wealth, to put a little nest egg away for the future, and also to help invest in property. It's a very easy way to do so. So Futurestay, what we do is we help rentalpreneurs do 2 really important things. The first is you're probably already listed on a channel like Airbnb. Well, we help your Airbnb listing perform better. We are partnered with Airbnb. We directly connect and we optimize your listing. Typically, our users see about 16% more revenue in the 6 months after using Futurestay than the 6 months before. And the other, and probably the most exciting, is we automatically create a direct booking website for you. That is all created in about 6 minutes. So you can do it while you're on your phone, standing in line for a latte somewhere, launch and create your own direct booking website, get it listed on Google Vacation Rentals, and our team optimizes it, and you can start taking 0 commission direct bookings. We do all that for you in a safe, really easy, fast way, so you can start making more money and be more successful as a rentalpreneur.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction. And I think it serves a great need. There's a lot of Airbnb. I've seen a lot of Airbnb listings. A lot of our listeners and members in the community, the STR, like the best investment community, where we do a lot of these listing audits. And if you have a technology platform that help you optimize, your photos, your captions, your copy, just a lot of little things that people miss can really optimize or can really increase revenue. Sounds like 60% is a great uplift in this business and in the direct booking side. And I love that you talked about that, because direct bookings has been such a big topic over the last few years. And just to give a quick background, folks, OTAs are called online. It stands for online travel agents. So Airbnb being the most popular. You have Booking.com, VRBO, Expedia, and a long list of others. So these are online travel agents where you list your property, whether you own it or you lease it, and then you do the rental arbitrage strategy. You put it onto the OTAs, Airbnb, Booking.com, etc. When you pay a lot of commissions to these OTAs, generally about 20%, and you don't have a lot of control. A direct booking website allows you to have your guests book directly with you, so that you don't pay those fees. There's some downsides to that. So Phil, maybe I'll give you the kind of hand over the mic to you, the proverbial mic to you, And maybe just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of the OTAs versus the pros and cons of a direct booking website. And what I would love to focus on is, 2 points, right? One is the marketing and the protection that you get from OTAs versus the kind of control that you have for your own when you have your own direct booking website. And I know that's kind of a lot, that's a lot to cover, but I would love to hear from your perspective since you've been in the space now for 10 years and you've seen the
Yeah.
the various cycles that we've gone through now.
Well, so I think I'm that's a really important topic to dig into. I think if I give a little bit of background of how I got started in the industry, it'll probably help shed a little bit of light, right? So I have been a tech entrepreneur for kind of from almost my entire life, since before college. And uh, when I was 10 years ago old, I sold my prior tech company and thought that I was going to become a rich tech bro. So I went into New York and I bought what was marketed as a loft, aka a studio for anyone who knows New York City, in Greenwich Village. And kind of thought I was off to the races. And the reality was it was too expensive for me. I couldn't afford it. I didn't really have enough other income to support my lifestyle. And I rapidly was in danger of losing that property. And so I did what a lot of people here listening do when they think, hey, how do I find a way to improve my financial situation and kind of move forward just using the assets that I have or ones that I can get without a huge investment? And so I just started renting it out. I started renting that apartment out. And this was before Airbnb had instant book. We're going back 10 years and change, actually almost 11 years now. This was before, you could use a software and have multi-channel distribution across a lot of different platforms. And so I was going on Craigslist and making listings. And Michael, you and I were from the same era, so you know what I'm talking about, right? You put it on furnished apartments, right? You'd put it on people looking literally that are going to come to the city and they would stay. And because at that point in time, vacation rentals 10 years ago was largely looked at for leisure markets. It was largely a thing that you would do in Florida or Vermont or places like that, right? In the US at least. And urban markets were its own separate thing. And Airbnb helped popularize that, obviously, as they started to grow. So I would find my kind of little Craigslist leads, and I needed a place to consolidate those leads. I needed a place to show them my calendar, show them photos of my property, tell them the rules. And being a semi-retired for a couple of months tech guy, I just decided to build my own. So I put my own website up and I was my own worst client where I kept asking for more and more and more features. And so eventually I built what was the MVP of Futurestay. It was a website that I could share with people for my own property that had a way for me to share the dates, share my rules, for them to put in their credit card and book the property, and a way for me to consolidate and take payments so that I didn't have to worry about people showing up with a paper bag of money. And yes, that did happen. And that's a little scary in the middle of New York back in 2014. And so for me, it was Futurestay, and the concept of a direct booking was a way for me to kind of take control and have a single way to have a reservation booking from someone that I had an offline conversation with and turn that into an online reservation that was safe and secure, and they knew the rules and I knew the rules and had a kind of contract behind it. That's the spirit of what a direct booking really is. A direct booking is really a way for you to culminate a conversation with a guest that is interested in booking your property and to do it in a safe way. It's a lot safer now than it was 10 years ago when I first built Futurestay. And I'll talk about some of the
Mhm.
pros and cons of OTA bookings and direct bookings. And I'll give you the spoiler alert first. Why not both? You really should have both as a part of your strategy. Direct bookings are higher, they're higher profit margin by far in most cases. They are more valuable, but they're also a lot harder to get. And so let's start with the obvious ones, which are OTA bookings. OTAs, online travel agencies, as Michael explains, are the easiest way to get the first thing that every single business needs. And if you're a rentalpreneur, you may not be thinking of yourself as a business today, but you are. You're selling a service that other people, that consumers can purchase. So like it or not, you're a business person. You're an entrepreneur. Businesses all need distribution. They need a way to access the market in order to function. And so the OTA is one of the easiest ways to take your product, your rental, format it in a way that someone can decide and look at it compared to other products, other rentals, and make a purchase decision. Click that button, put that credit card in, and buy. And so the OTA does something, they do a really, really valuable service beyond just matching supply and demand. Good OTAs like Airbnb also make sure that both the supply and the demand don't kill each other, right? That they follow the same rules of a reservation. That's what allows instant booking to happen, right? Back in the day, if you go back 12 or 13, not even 12, 8 or 9 years, this may be surprising to people that are, that entered the market during COVID. Airbnb existed, but it didn't have instant booking. In fact, initially, you couldn't even book on Vrbo or Airbnb online. Literally, you would sign up, you'd put in a request, you'd put information in, which would get emailed to the host. They would take a look at that information, and they had to figure out a way to process that. It might have been cash, it might have been check. Maybe they had a credit card processor. It was really rare back then. Maybe if they had their own website, they could have taken a direct booking. But essentially, you were really paying just to get eyeballs onto your property. What Airbnb innovated was they created trust between the buyer and the seller, between the guest and the host. That rating, that mutual review system that is a pain in our butts and a pain in the travelers' butts, the guest butts as well in certain ways, is what allows instant bookings to happen, because we can both trust each other enough to know who we say we are and that you're going to get the experience that you think you're going to get when you book the property. And so that premium, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, please finish your point. Sorry,
so that premium, that expense that they take on in order to be able to make sure you are who you say you are and that the guest is who they say they are, is why they're going to charge you that hefty commission. It's the marketing that they do and the validation to make sure they're protecting both sides of that transaction that you're going to end up paying. And maybe you don't see it coming out of your side, because if you're connected directly to Airbnb, it's a fee that they charge the guest, right? But it's still not money that's not going in your pocket and going somewhere else. They're charging anywhere between 12% and up to 22% of a reservation to make sure that that transaction runs smoothly and they can keep their hosts like you filled with guests. So it's quite expensive.
Right. Yeah, it is very expensive. I'm glad you highlighted that. I think a lot of people are like, hey, why are they taking all this money from me, right? Why am I paying 18%, the guest is paying 3% for Airbnb to run this platform to match us? And I think you hit on a great point. It's the trust part. It's the trust part that some random person from California is going to instant book my property in Philadelphia and just shows up and expects that the place actually exists, the codes actually exist, it actually looks like the way it is, right? Because of the review system, because of the brand that Airbnb has built and all the back end work, and that's what we're paying for as the supply in that two-sided market, and that comes at just a monetary cost. But from you highlighted that point about control. You don't have a ton of control as a host. Ultimately, Airbnb makes the rules on their platform. They are the government for their platform, and if you don't like the rules, you can leave. But more importantly, I think people confuse the fact that they believe they have a right to be a host. You don't actually. It's a privilege. Airbnb does not have to have you. Airbnb does not need to allow you to be on their platform. And they have a ton of rules that govern that behavior. Some that are guest friendly, some are host friendly, right? And that kind of leads into our second topic, how that evolution has happened. But before we get there, I think the other point I want to highlight is on the payment side. Right? A lot of people, Airbnb and these platforms are really just a payment platform wrapped in travel, wrapped in hospitality. As a host, the most important thing is you actually get paid. You want, and that's why I think Airbnb does a very good job. Is someone book with you, that payment is going to hit your account in 1 to 3 business days, and that's just a lot. It's a lot less certain when you're off Airbnb or you're booking directly. You're taking payments. You're the merchant of record. The chargeback risk. There's a lot of things that you have to now manage And Airbnb completely abstracts that away. Airbnb and other OTAs abstract that away because now they're the ones generally speaking, they're the ones taking the payment risks. They have built all the technology in the back end to reduce that risk for everyone. So I think just want to kind of talk about the benefits of that and the costs, right? You don't have control. Like you have to present your properties in a certain way. You have to price it in a certain way. You have to take guests, right, that you may not want to, but the platform rolls. Whereas you don't have to do that on a direct booking. And Futurestay is very obviously geared towards giving hosts the opportunity to take direct bookings. So maybe if you can talk about the benefits, but also the cost of direct bookings, mainly the fact that that trust factor isn't there. If someone goes to Chang tolls, it's a lot different than going on Airbnb.com.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I think you said it really well. It's like, what is the cost of a direct booking, right? Because all of those things that you're paying for in the commission to Airbnb are valuable, right? Full disclosure, right? Futurestay is an Airbnb partner. We've been partners with them for 7 years. So, knock on wood, I talk as transparently as possible about the pros and cons, and they know that that there are benefits, that we think there are benefits to using Airbnb. But Airbnb shouldn't be your entire strategy as a rentalpreneur. The reality is all of those individual pieces, the building of the trust, the making sure that the payments are, that the people that are booking are who they say they are, making sure the payments hit your bank account. Right. And if they do hit your bank account and someone disputes them, that you have a way to protect those payments as long as you're in the right. All of those things become your responsibility when you take direct bookings. Now, before I talk about direct bookings in a little more detail, I want to just do a little exercise, a little mental exercise for everyone listening. So, Michael, you probably talk a bit about making sure that you have financial goals for rentalpreneurs and making sure that people understand the basics of how to read a balance sheet and understanding your P&L. Well, most rentalpreneurs, if you're like many of them, don't necessarily operate their short-term rentals at any kind of profit. Many of them actually operate their short-term rentals, if you just have 1 or 2 properties, at a minor loss, but that actually is offset by the fact that they're paying off their mortgage and they're happy with that. So they're building value as they continue to operate. And those that are operating with a margin oftentimes have fairly small margins. Sometimes you can see margins of 5, 10, 15%. Hopefully, as you build a bigger and better portfolio, you get bigger and bigger margins, and that's why you're scaling it.
Well, we're at 32, so we're okay. Just wave my own flag.
Are in your portfolio, Michael?
38.
So that's what you would aim for, right? You'd want to aim for 20, 30, 40% margins as you continue to grow. But for most people that are just starting out with 1 or 2 properties, they may be operating at just a tiny margin. Now, you heard me say 15%.
Very true.
15% is the difference between a direct booking and an OTA booking. Because many rentalpreneurs operate at such low margins, if you're operating at a 2 or 3% margin business, you actually don't need to have a significant number of direct bookings in order to sometimes add 50% margin to your business or even double your margin of your business, right? Because if you're already operating at a 1% or 2% margin, or God forbid at a negative 5% margin, think about what removing 15 to 20% of your overhead does for your actual margins of your business.
Humongous.
It's humongous, right? Huge. So we always look, and one of the things we do at Futurestay is we try to build awareness about, like, people sometimes think of direct bookings versus OTA bookings like the zero-sum game. Like you need one or the other, and you're going to move all of your bookings off of Airbnb, and that's not that is not an option, or at least not a short-term option for most rentalpreneurs. But the reality is that every incremental bit of margin can help if you're operating at a low margin, which most rentalpreneurs are. So the benefit here and the target here is thinking, which bookings should I have as direct? And how many bookings should I have as direct? And how do I get to that number? So it's not all or none, it's both. And how do I figure out what that number is? Often it's 10 to 20% is where you're looking at doubling your actual margin if you're running a low margin STR, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's a great point. Sorry.
Yeah. So the way that we think about it in terms of what the cost is, you don't have that automatic trust built in. You have to figure out how to handle payments. You have to figure out a way to protect your property. Air cover is not insurance. Airbnb will tell you that themselves. but it's better than nothing. And if you have nothing, then you know it's a little scary to be out there doing that. And you have to figure out a way to get guests to visit and see your website. Those things all are expensive. And to be honest with you, if you tried to do them all yourself, it'll probably cost you more than 15% of a booking. That's the secret.
Yeah.
Right. That's what Airbnb's figured out.
No, that's exactly. I'm so glad you highlighted that point. I think people think of it as, I'm paying, I'm paying, just make the math easy. I'm paying 20% to Airbnb, but then if I take my own bookings through Stripe, I'm paying 3%. Or if they're telling me, then I'm actually going to be completely, then I earn all that margin. But I think what people forget is the marketing part, right? And the rest is derivative of that. Like, Airbnb spends a lot of time, a lot of money, time, resources on marketing. That's why, Airbnb is synonymous with short-term rentals. And we just going to use those words interchangeably. Kudos to the branding team out there. I mean, it's just a massive stroke of marketing.
Yeah, well, you're right, Michael. So the trick is figuring out how you can replicate those things with the lowest cost possible and the easiest way possible. And there are ways to do it, right? Obviously, I'm going to say, Futurestay is the way to do it, right? And so Futurestay is one way that you can do that. But there are lots of ways that you can do these things. You can make sure you're able to process payments, make sure you're able to attract guests, make sure you're able to trust those guests and protect your property. I'm going to quickly go through 5 of them just so you listening understand what you can do to set up direct bookings in a way that is economical and safe. The first is,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So the first is obviously you need a website. You can do that yourself. You can go to a free website builder online, put a website together. Now you have to have it sync with your calendar so people can book that. So that limits your options some, but you need a way to just display your property so you can take bookings. Services like Stripe exist, and Stripe allows you to take payments at typically around a 3% fee. So 3% versus 15 to 20 to 22, that's still a great place to be in terms of margin. The third is you want to be able to protect yourself. And so you need something as far as damage waivers or damage deposits. There are lots of great companies out there that'll do that for you. To name a few, you can look at Superhog or Truvy. You can look at Proper. You can look at Wavo. You can look at Safely. These are all ways that just for $10, $15 per night, you're getting thousands and thousands of dollars in coverage for these guests, right? And then you need to make sure that you're equipped to record all this information. So when you get a booking, if there is a dispute, you're able to win a chargeback against it. And those are kind of the basics. But yes, services like Futurestay, we do all that for you in kind of one package, and you don't have to go piece it together yourself.
Yeah. And it's great to highlight the benefits of that. And, I completely agree. Like, you need to go back to your previous point. It's not a zero-sum game. You need to have the OTAs, and you need to have your own direct booking site. I want to kind of go back to the marketing part, because I think that for me was the biggest struggle. We had looked into building our own website, kind of the journey we talked about. And, we're like, okay, we just go on Squarespace, we build something, go on Upwork, hire a designer. And then we came back, this is way too hard, right? It's not just the cost of building it, and also maintaining it as well. It has to kind of work within your PMS. It has to fill into your backend, and things change. Things always are moving around in the API, and you need someone to maintain that. You don't want your site to go down or have the bad pricing. So that was like one problem. And the other bigger problem was really just, how do you get eyeballs, right? You can go on social media, put up on the Instagram page, it gets you a little bit, but most people kind of default to running ads, and it can get very, very, very expensive. You're competing against all the OTAs as well. And then that savings that you thought you had, really gets whittled down, because Facebook are very, very expensive to market against. So, I think if you have a very unique property, right, you have, some crazy view, or you have a house in a cave, something like that like people are just naturally going to gravitate to, probably don't need the OTAs as much. But if you have kind of a normal type property, that marketing expense actually is a very significant part of that. And I'm kind of calling these out because the way that we thought through it was, okay, we're not social media marketers. I'm not a social media marketer, or I wasn't 4 years ago. I'm not a technology person. and so I'm not going to build it myself. So the way that I thought about it was like, okay, we're going to, use some technology to collect guest emails, right? Whether it's through, when they book with us through an OTA, they already, that trust factor is already there. They've been there, they had a good stay. Okay, I know this is legit. And then we have signage there that says, hey, if you want to book with us directly, scan this QR code, give us your email, this is the website. If you want to come back, book through that. And that goes to a website that we have through our PMS system that, just pops up. I just want to kind of share, like, that's our personal strategy. We get definitely not 10 to 20%. I would love that metric. We get 80% of Airbnb, still 80% Airbnb last year, about 15% other OTA, 18% other OTAs, probably like 2-3% direct bookings. And it is, people don't really find us organically, to be candid. It's always a repeat booker, or it's a guest of a booker that they're, they logged into Wi-Fi through StayFi, and then we have their email address, and then we send out a monthly email that just says, if you want to back to our website, you save 20% versus OTAs. And I highlight that because I would love to get your feedback, and I feel like that's generally, or at least in my view, like a good starting point, especially if you don't have a very differentiated property. So, and I'm just for the education, like, maybe talk about, is that a cost strategy? What are some of the pros and cons? What could we be doing better? Could I be?
Yeah. So what you're talking about here is the fundamental first step of any business, right? So distribution is, you're essentially paying for some platform to share whatever you're selling with a broader audience. Very few businesses can succeed if they're always paying for a new customer every single time they want to sell something, right? What they do next is they want to retain that customer and sell them more stuff, right? Imagine if Nike could only sell one pair of shoes to each person in the world once, right? It'd get really hard to run Nike at some point in time, or Amazon.
People need to grow more feet.
Thank you. Yes, we need a lot more feet, right? And so that is what you're doing if you're only using an OTA. You're saying, I'm going to pay the cost for a new customer every single time I get a customer. I'm the only business person in the world that wants to pay that new cost every single time. And so at a minimum, what you need to do is allow existing customers to come back and find you again and buy from you again. And you want to make that as easy as possible. What you just described is probably the standard first step of something that we call the direct booking loop. Direct booking loop is essentially saying, how do I use the resources that I'm already paying for without buying a bunch of new stuff to start getting direct bookings? Now, yes, you will need a place to take direct bookings. So you do have to get a website. You do have to have a way to process payments. But we're talking about with the exclusion of doing things like paying for ads. I want to say one thing about paying for ads for everyone that's listening. So, Michael, you've run ads before. I've run ads on things for, on e-commerce things for, 20 plus years here. Ads are only good. You should only run ads if you have a lot of stuff to sell, right? Imagine if you wanted to sell, I don't know, this mouse, right? I have one copy of this mouse, right? Me running a bunch of ads to sell this one copy of this mouse is going to likely result in spending way more money than the mouse is worth. Because number one, I'm not going to have enough data to target effectively because I won't be able to feed my conversion data. Once I sell the mouse, it's gone. And all ad networks run off of conversion data. And the worst part is, I'm probably going to target a lot of people that aren't interested in the mouse in the first place. Half the people that are going to contact me, the mouse is already going to be gone by the time they reach me. That's how it works if you have one property. If you have one property, you have a limited number of availability. And, you guys already know this. Most people want to stay for the same dates. No one's trying to come stay on Wednesday night, right? They're, in the middle of an off season. That's not what they're doing.
Give me those people. Those are my favorite people.
I mean, like if you're in an urban market, maybe a little bit different. Maybe the inventory dates are a little bit more fungible. But like if you have a small portfolio, 1, 2, 3 properties, you don't have a lot to sell online. Half the people that get to your website are going to sign up and they're going to look at your website and be like, oh, the dates I was looking for are already booked. Oh, Christmas is booked. Oh, New Year's booked. Holiday season is booked. And so you're literally just throwing money away. Now, maybe you could capture their email and so on. It is not worth running ads unless you either have an e-commerce background or if you have a lot of properties, let's say probably 30, 50 properties, that's when I think it might be worthwhile spending the money on learning how to run ads correctly. What is worth doing is figuring out how to get people to come to your property website in two ways. One is by taking advantage of the guests that are already staying in your property. You can do that with a tool like Stayfi. That's a great tool. It allows you to essentially capture people's email addresses when they come in to use the Wi-Fi when they're in your property and they want you to connect to the Wi-Fi. You don't even need a tool to do that, though. You can literally just capture email addresses by having a link or having a QR code that goes to that says you need to enter your email address. You can go print this out at freeqrcode.com. So all the things that I suggest,
I actually do that.
Yeah, so exactly.
No,
right?
I actually do that. Yeah,
these things are not hard to do, guys. Like you can do all these things yourself. If you want someone to do them for you, you can pay me. Right, our company will do that for you, right? Like that's part of our service. But you can do them yourself. You don't need to go buy a system to get these things done. But it does save you a bunch of time. So you can go get a free QR code that captures email addresses, and then it sends you the Wi-Fi information. Everyone's got a phone. Their phones are all on Wi-Fi. It's just their computer is not, right? So you can capture those emails. Yep. You can get a free email service and email those people each month. That will get you typically, if you only have a couple of properties, that'll typically get you to like 5-7% direct bookings. Michael, because you have more properties, it actually may be a little bit lower. And I don't know where your properties are. If they're in an urban area, if you're in urban metros
Philly, yeah, 30 of them are in Philly, so
yeah, so you don't get as much repeat visits there. You get a mix, right? So if you're in an urban metro, some people are going there for work or they're going there for, whatever the case is. If you're in a leisure destination, you're going to get families that are going to go the same every year, right? Not everyone, but that will get you closer to maybe 10% repeat bookings just by capturing emails and emailing people. We'll talk in a minute about whether or not that is against terms of use for Airbnb now. That's a whole separate topic. Yeah. Policy changes, but that's the strategy. The other piece of strategy that I would recommend to you, and this is a piece of information that if you're not doing this today, you're literally losing 5% potential direct bookings just from doing this one thing that I'm going to teach you. Okay, this is a tactic.
Hold on, let me frame this.
Get it in the frame, guys.
Like if you're listening right now, like this is why podcasts are great. It's taken us about 10-15 minutes to get to this point, but you kind of have to frame the conversation. And now this is the alpha that Phil's going to share with us. That's going to make us a ton of money. Phil, hit me with it.
So if you're not doing this, you're literally leaving money on the table, and you're going to be like, "Duh, that's so simple." And it is not against terms of use, even the new Airbnb off-platform policy. Obviously, everyone knows we're not allowed to write down our web address. We're not allowed to share our own contact information. Why? Because that's a booking. Once someone has inquired, now they're in Airbnb's funnel, and you would be literally taking that booking from Airbnb. That's not cool. We all just said they're a great partner. Why would we want to do that? But what you are allowed to do is on your listing, say very clearly, let's say for example, Michael's property is in South Philly and it is on the water. And it's called Waterfront Retreat in South Philly. You're allowed to say
that's real. That'd be a real dangerous listing.
So, but it would be. That's a fair point. Okay, let's say Fishtown, still a little dangerous, but up and coming. So you're allowed to say right in the beginning of your listing, not in your title. You want your title to be not have any proper names in it. It should be eye catching for someone that's looking for a particular property type. But in your description, the first sentence: we can't wait to host you at Michael's Waterside Retreat in Fishtown, PA. Right there, proper names. You know why? Because 8% of the people that visit your listing are going to take that, run their cursor over it, copy it, and pop it right into Google and search for your listing. Why? Because they're either looking for a better price because they know that there are Airbnb commissions, or a lot of them don't even know or care about the commission. They just want to find out more about your property. They want to see, is this Michael guy real? Maybe he has other pictures. Maybe he's running promos. Maybe he's got other properties. And so your website, your direct booking website, just by creating that proper noun string in one place, and I don't mean just the name here, the state over there, like make it easy. Otherwise, people won't do it. In the first or second sentence of your description, that creates something called the billboard effect. The billboard effect is a known phenomena in travel. And if you were a large property manager with 200, 500, 1,000 units, and you weren't listed on Airbnb or weren't listed on Vrbo or Booking.com, when they came and sat down with you to try to sell you and say, Michael, I want you to list your properties on our OTA, and you say, no, Vrbo, no, Expedia, I don't need to. I'm already at 80% direct bookings. We're already at occupancy. Why would I list on your channel and pay a commission? You know what they're going to say? Because you're going to get more traffic to your own website with the billboard effect. This isn't stealing. These guys know this exists. It's part of their pitch to large property managers.
Okay.
You're not taking advantage of it if you don't have your proper name, noun written, and the location. That right there will drive 7 to 10% of the traffic that hits your website or your listing on your OTA directly to your website. That is something that
I love
everyone's
it. I'm
going
gonna
to
do.
do. So Michael,
I'm gonna do right after we get off this. I'll do that.
Do that for each
Beautiful.
one of your properties, and then you and I will meet up in New York, and we'll go grab a coffee or a beer, and you let me know how it's performing for you.
Okay. No, we just personally like Philadelphia has a certain demographic, right? And it's a lot of in and outs. So there, I actually don't mind OTA bookings. I actually kind of sleep better because I have air cover, I have the identity. It's that premium is worth it. So my portfolio, the way it's structured, I have my portfolio in Philadelphia that's rent to arbitrage. We rent and then we relist it on Airbnb. We make this units. It's a good cash flow business, but doesn't have appreciation, doesn't have tax benefits. We've taken those profits and we buy property. So we own 7 now, 6 in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee and 1 in the Catskills we just bought last year. So those, I think, those is where we're really trying to focus on the direct booking side, because to your point, leisure market, repeat bookings. Hopefully a family will come every 2 years and we have 40 years, be a great kind of LTV for that, or lifetime value for that customer. And so I think that would be that's where I would love to put that. So if you're listening and you have, properties in the leisure location, that's phenomenal. And it's really, really smart, because the first thing is you highlight it, you right click and search on Google, and then, hopefully your listing comes up. Actually, that should lead me to another question, and then I want to pivot over to Airbnb's new policies, and I think that a lot of people are thinking through that and how it impacts them. When you do search for the proper name and location, a lot of times what ends up happening is you go on Google and it has the 7 sponsored links from all the OTAs to push you to their website. Right. Makes sense. And this gets into kind of e-com and SEO and all that stuff. But where is Futurestay differentiated where it can get me higher on the OTA? Because the biggest problem I have with my property management system, I use Hostaway, have, quote unquote free product, although I obviously I pay for it in a different way. But they have, a website that I can use. They have a website they use my direct bookings. It's I can't really customize it, so it doesn't look very. It's not the look that I would go for.
Sure.
Just kind of have. And the problem with that is the SEO kind of stinks, and I'm not. My website is for almost all the way on the first page. So you have to really look for it to get that. I think that's why my conversion rates are so low. And I think that's where, your, Futurestay and competing products where, from what I understand, the pitches, you can do it in a way where you're going to, attract more eyeballs. So maybe if you can talk about that a little bit, if that's a
100%.
differentiator with Futurestay.
Yeah. So the first thing is, and you hit the nail on the head. I'm not suggesting anyone listening needs to become an SEO expert. Guys, especially if you just have a handful of properties, it's not worth it. Kind of like running ads. However, you should 100% be the #1 result for the search of your property name and location. If someone else is beating you for that, then you're not doing it right. And that means really the way you would do that is, if you're using Futurestay, for example, we automatically make that the title of your page and the H1 text on your page. So we would always beat your OTA listings, because your OTA listings have this maybe in the description, but it's not the title. They're not, OTAs aren't really advertising your property. They're advertising properties like yours in that area. And so we'll always come up above the OTA listings for your property, which is what you would want. The second thing, and we didn't spend a lot of time on this, and this could be its own show, to be honest with you, is everyone knows that Google Vacation Rentals exists, right? Everyone's heard of Google Vacation Rentals. Hopefully, Michael, I know you've heard of it. Google Vacation Rentals is a little bit of the kind of 800-pound gorilla in the room, or the elephant in the room that no one talks about, which may become an 800-pound gorilla. Google Vacation Rentals is a way that Google Vacation Rentals works like all of Google. Their goal is to index all vacation rentals in the world, put them in a little search widget on top of Google search results. And so when you search for any vacation rental term in any market, they show up with their listings, and they have all the information in terms of where that property is listed, all the sites it's listed on, how much each one's listed for. And lo and behold, if you have your website listed there and your website is built by a company that's partnered with Google Vacation Rentals, like Futurestay, your website is generally going to be a lower price. And Google even wants people to click through to that. And so they say, this is the official site of Michael Chang's property, right? You click through that, you have the verification and the vetting by Google, right? Google's giving it kind of tacit verification by calling it official. And so having that addition, and you have the reviews there too, having that is one way to have a direct booking website that is still no commission. It's free to list on Google Vacation Rentals as long as you're working with a partner. That drives free direct booking traffic to your website that is also, they're going to trust you a little more implicitly because you're coming from Google. So you need to do that too, right? You got to make sure your website provider is partnered with Google. Otherwise, you're just going to have a bunch of OTA listings there, and those don't help you at all. You're going to be paying commission on everything that goes through that.
This is a question that I've been thinking about, and you kind of brought. I'm glad you kind of pulled this forward. They've all kind of wanted to ask this question. I'm already paying for a direct booking website, and a lot of people listen here, they're paying for a property management system. Generally speaking, whether it's I use HostAway or like Guesty, Hospitable, the long tail of property management systems. Most of them have a direct booking website. And again, I think all of them have flaws, and they can be like really improved. But the nice part, it's just integrated. You usually just like click a button, and it's kind of there for you. It's integrated to your back end, so you don't have to deal with pricing. You don't have to worry about double bookings, all the pricing. Everything's integrated. What's the case to add on a Futurestay, or to turn it off and use Futurestay instead for your direct booking website? Like, what's the value proposition there?
Yeah, so the value proposition is pretty simple. If you want to make more money with direct bookings, you have to use a website that's actually going to convert, right? And so our website is incredibly high converting. I've been building e-commerce funnels since before the word e-commerce was a thing, right? And so we've learned how to optimize websites. Futurestay has built more e-commerce websites for short-term rental owners than anyone else in the world, over 100,000 over the past decade. So we know really well what works and what doesn't. As an example, we're talking about Google Vacation Rentals. We were one of Google Vacation Rentals' 2 launch partners. They launched with us and one other company. So we helped them design the HTML schema to rank websites. So I guess you can imagine how well we rank with Google Vacation Rentals, right? So some of it is just being hyper focused on driving results, as opposed to having the website being an afterthought for a bolt-on or afterthought for a PMS. So we're direct booking first, if you will. That's one, right? The second is
I love that. No, that's really, I think that's a great point, because that it is, and not to, I'm not speaking poorly of anyone. But I think they admit themselves that it is something that they're working on improving. It's not the core business. It is a bolt-on, and it's very inflexible. At least the one on HostAway, it's inflexible, and you can't really. There's not a lot you can do with it. I think it's by design, right? They don't even monkey around with that, and then they have a bunch of support issues they have to figure out and not get paid for. And I think you're right. There's a ton of value in creating a high converting website, and that's my personal journey as I kind of do more on the marketing side. Having a higher converting page, it makes a world of difference, and I'm glad you highlighted that, because it's hard to understand that if you're not kind of in the business. But I'm just speaking that's like more into the business now. Your website and how it converts, how it looks, is going to have a material impact on whether it's 10%, 1 out of 10 people converting, or 1 out of 100 people converting, and
It
that
makes a
makes all the
huge
difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge
Difference.
difference to have it.
So,
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
oh no, the other question on that is, and then I'd love to just, I know we don't have so much time left, but I'm kind of hit on the new Airbnb policies. Is it easy to integrate? So, if you sign up if you have a PMS, it's Futurestay. Is the integration straightforward? Is it just an API into the two where it will still capture all of the business logic that we need, so that you can manage, the business on the OTA, I'm sorry, on the PMS system, but then have the separate, Futurestay website that's converting a lot higher for you, but all that business logic is still kind of flowing into your PMS. So, your automated messages, like all that other business logic is working within the PMS.
Yeah. So the way Futurestay works is we're directly partnered with Airbnb. And so you probably know, if you have a PMS, you probably know that you can't connect two PMSs to Airbnb at the same time. Obviously, you can't have two
Cannot.
systems telling Airbnb what to do, right? That wouldn't work well. But we have a unique way to connect to them that doesn't overwrite or interact with that in a negative way. So you can sign up for Futurestay, connect to Airbnb. You authorize us to connect to Airbnb, and we pull all of your Airbnb rules and data out of your Airbnb account into Futurestay. And that's what allows us to create a website that functions exactly like your Airbnb account with all the same rules, which presumably, if you have a PMS, you've written from your PMS to Airbnb. So we match all your business rules and your availability, your rates, et cetera, in Airbnb instantly, and your website's ready to go in literally about 5 minutes. And then if you do have a PMS, you can connect Futurestay to your PMS to keep the availability in sync. With your PMS,
Hmm.
we just sync availability and guest data. So we don't do any other syncing with your PMS. If you start changing rules in your PMS, they're not going to flow to Futurestay, but that's okay because we're still connected to your Airbnb account. So you just click a button, we pull it right back from Airbnb again. You say, oh, pull my rules again. So you can pull your rules, your content from Airbnb however many times you want. We don't negatively impact or overwrite anything in your Airbnb account unless you want to use us as a PMS. Lots of people use Futurestay as a PMS and don't have other PMSs. Actually, about
Gotcha.
75% of our customers don't have a PMS, and they come to Futurestay and they say, I don't really know what a PMS is. I don't really care. I just want to make more money with my short-term rental, and I want direct bookings. So we give you, part of Futurestay is essentially a PMS, a very lightweight, easy to use one that you can use from your
I
phone
gotcha.
or anything else. That way you give us full control of Airbnb if you like, or we can just sync availability. It's up to you. And it gives you a really easy way to start making more money with a short-term rental without having to learn all the complexity of how PMS works. And yes, it automates your messaging, and it automates your receipts, and it automates your damage waivers. All those things are built into Futurestay's direct website without having to go set them up. That is one other really important differentiator. If you're
Got it.
using a conventional PMS, as you know, there's like a marketplace page, and you're like, oh, I guess I need a damage protection, and oh, I probably need a guest screening, and I probably need a way to collect. And so you go choose a bunch of other services. Futurestay does all of those for you within one service, so you don't need to figure all that out. It's just one price per
I
month,
love
and
that. Yeah.
that includes everything in it. So you can just literally start taking direct bookings like this afternoon.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and I think that's where, it's an underserved segment of the market where, you have a few properties, 1 to 3 properties. Like, you don't want to spend a ton of it. It's a learning curve. Spend bunch of time on the technology side. Maybe you don't like technology, and you don't want to deal with it. Having an integrated service like Futurestay, where all that's abstracted away and everything is kind of set up for you, so that you just sign up, and all that integration is built in, and you just, you're clicking a button and I assume to opt in or opt out. I think that there's a, so folks out there where you're looking for something more light, but just easier to onboard without a ton of upfront brain damage. Because going on a PMS system actually is a lot of work actually to get it set up. It's very powerful, but it's a lot of work to set up. But if you're just looking for something that you can onboard quickly and then get more direct bookings, and I would love for some of that to go on my website, where we can go and convert a higher rate, because I feel like we need to do a better job of that. I think that's a great value proposition. I do want to kind of just, I think we probably have 10 minutes left, and I'd love to spend the next like 5 minutes talking about the new Airbnb policy that just came out on April 11th, 2025. Just on a very high level, uh, it forces, not gonna say forces, but there's a bunch of new rules that Airbnb has now implemented that restrict the flexibility of hosts to collect guest information or to interact with a guest more directly. So Phil, maybe if you want to give us kind of a primer on this new policy and the impact on direct bookings, whether some help or some hurt that strategy.
Yeah, this is really important, guys. And I want to do two things, right? The first is explain what I think the net impact of the policy changes will be. And the second is explain what the policy is, right? To understand what the net impact is, you do have to kind of understand what the policy is, but we're going to start there anyway because it'll give a lot of context. The sky is not falling. You are still allowed to speak with your guests. You are still allowed to collect guest information. Airbnb wants to formalize a bunch of the things that have been kind of unwritten rules around how and where you collect guest information and what you do with it. And they've actually sharpened their language. I'll use the word narrowed their language, right? And when it comes to guest information collection and what you can do with it. On the other side, they've also broadened their language in terms of being more protective and more restrictive about what sorts of fees can exist on and off of the platform, saying there are less things you can actually collect money from off the platform, but there are actually more ways you can talk to guests. So one half is a restrictive policy, and the other half is a more expansive, more free form policy. The reality about all this, though, is that most people, Michael, I know you run you have a growing and large portfolio. You probably read the new policy and the old policy. Many people have never read the old policy. And so the fact that there is a new policy and the new policy sounds restrictive is really scary, but they haven't read the old policy, so they're not comparing it to anything. And the old policy, to be honest, sounded even scarier in many ways. So this is a little bit of it's not a nothing burger. It is real. You do need to be aware of it. I think they announced this policy because they are going to make other changes in the future, and we can talk about what those are. So they probably will enforce this one more strictly and more rigorously, but it's not a sky is falling policy. What does the policy actually say? It says a lot, but I'm going to bucket it into two buckets for everyone listening. There's one bucket of things in the policy that are largely around how you can capture and use guest information. There's another bucket of things which are largely around what fees you are allowed to charge for a guest, right? Bucket one, capture and using guest information. Previously, Airbnb has already had a number of policies, which I'm sure you guys are aware of, that you can't do things like ask a guest for their email address or tell them to call you on the phone or try to take communications off of the Airbnb platform. That was partially because they want to keep a record of everything and partially because they want to make sure you're not trying to, quote unquote, steal Airbnb bookings, right? And
Yep.
you also were not allowed previously to do any marketing communication to a guest, and they used the word marketing in the old policy prior to a stay. The new policy is a little bit narrower. What they specifically say is this: you are not allowed in any way, shape, or form to move a booking or part of a booking, including nights that haven't been booked yet for that booking, off of Airbnb or outside of their channels so that you can charge for it outside of the channel. They use the word move both in the title and in the description, the bullets below. For something to be moved, it has to already exist. And so they say you can't move a current or future booking off of Airbnb. But what that literally means is if there's a booking already being discussed with a host, an inquiry that started or a thread that started about a booking, that's Airbnb's booking. If there's not a booking being discussed, meaning a guest came to your property, they booked through Airbnb, you didn't move that booking in any way, they showed up and you said, hey, Michael, I'm glad you had a good stay at my property. I'd love to capture your email address and let you know what I'm doing in the future. As long as you're not moving a future booking and instead you're talking to them about bookings that haven't even been considered yet, by the letter of Airbnb's policy, you're not actually breaking any rules today. In the past, you were. The past used the word marketing, and what I just described is marketing, right? You're actually not prohibited from doing that according to the letter of the policy now, whereas before it was very clear that you couldn't use marketing. There's a second, I'll use the word loophole, introduced in the first bucket here again about how you can use and capture guest data. Airbnb is incredibly clear that it's now within terms of use to ask a guest via Airbnb's specific channels, like within their messaging channel. You can ask them, hey, guest, do you prefer to message me through Airbnb's official messaging, or would you rather message me a different way? And the guest is allowed to say, I have a preference. I'd love you to just email me instead, or I'd love you to just call my phone instead. And you are allowed to share that contact information or get that contact information from the guest. This is a really big change, guys, right? Because before they just had a blanket prohibition to all this. They carve this out as an exception. One reason why, of course,
Is that
because
after a booking's done? I assume that's after a booking's done, right? That can't be. If it's before, then it opens up it's a big hole in their funnel.
They make it very clear that you are allowed to communicate with the guest and ask the guest whatever particular channel they want to communicate on, and continue the communication on that channel. They do, of course, say that any communication through those channels and any future channels that come as a result and antecedent to that are still subject to the exact same rules. So you still can't move a booking off of Airbnb and then book it a different way. Airbnb is smart enough to know that if you're talking to Phil about booking the 1st through the 7th, and then you share an email address and all of a sudden the 1st through the 7th is booked and it didn't come from Airbnb, they're going to come knocking on your virtual door probably, and they'll know that you did a thing that you just said you wouldn't do according to their terms of use.
Yeah, no,
break those rules. I'm just saying that they're making it clear that you're allowed to move the communication off of the channel if the guest requests it. Right?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Having used the Airbnb platform now for 8 years now, the software and the AI have gotten much better, and it continues to improve. I think at an accelerated pace. So that scenario that just highlighted there, where they see someone looking to book the 1st to the 7th, and then you giving them a way to contact you off platform, and then magically those dates are blocked. They're going to get a nasty message from Airbnb, and I just folks be really careful, because they will send your listing, they will do a bunch of things to you that you're not going to like.
So Michael, you're 100% right. Let's be really clear, guys. As I said earlier, I don't think you should be careful the rules. I think you should know the rules and know what is permissible and not.
Of course.
Right? So it is permissible to collect that contact information at the guest requests. That was not specifically enumerated out in the old policy as something that was permissible, meaning they know that's okay. They're likely required by regulators in Europe to have that as a policy, right? And that's probably why they've added that. Yeah. And so don't abuse it and start trying to take bookings off platform, because they specifically say that that if you move a booking, right, or one that's being discussed, future, current bookings, if you move a discussed booking, they're going to consider that a breach of terms. What you would use that for, though, is that means if a guest says, look, if do most guests want to message through Airbnb? Put yourself in the guest shoes. I don't want to message through Airbnb when I'm traveling. Text me, call me, WhatsApp me. I got way too many things going on. I want to be logging into the Airbnb app, right? It's not convenient for me. It may be convenient for the host. The host is the one that is using their PMS or their Airbnb app. As the guest, I only use Airbnb, twice a year. I'd much rather you WhatsApp me or email me. So ask the guest if you want, according to the terms of use. It's in there, carved out as an exception. Don't try to take a booking off the platform, but ask them that. And that way, guess what? You already have their contact information, and you can ask them later, such as in Stay, do you mind if I email you, or do you mind if I WhatsApp you to let you know about my property in the future? That's very clear that you can do that. Just don't move any bookings off, and you're in compliance with that first bucket. The second bucket of rules is really important, and I think this is a little bit of foreshadowing to where Airbnb is going. Okay, so the second bucket of rules is specifically around making sure that any information or fees or any requirements for a booking to happen are clearly enumerated in the Airbnb platform. What does that mean? It means that, let's say, for example, you have a pool heating fee, right? They use this example in their list, in their policy. If that pool heating fee is not visible in a listing and shown to a guest in advance, but there's a pool amenity, The guest isn't going to know there's an additional fee to use that amenity. They're going to show up at your property, and what are they going to do? They're going to be like, man, I didn't know this $150 fee existed. I'm not having a good stay. I'm going to give you a bad review, and I'm going to complain to Airbnb. They're trying to avoid situations like that, or worse,
Yep.
where people are tacking on fee, all sorts of crazy fees. Oh, you got to pay a $10 smart, door fee, or whoever knows what, right? And they're trying to avoid people that are either intentionally or unintentionally making it hard for a guest to get the thing that they thought they were buying by making sure all fees go through the platform. The problem is you can't list those fees yourself in Airbnb. You can write them in your listing. That's not good enough. They need to be enumerated on the side as individual fees so that they can be a part of a booking or considered as part of a booking. And Airbnb doesn't have a tool for that. So what they're saying is, if you want to charge these fees, number one, if they are required to have a part of the stay, like a fee for ID check or a fee for door access or a resort fee, you are not allowed to list them for your property unless you're using a software that can put those fees on your Airbnb listing for you. And most PMSs cannot do that. So in general, any fee that's required to access a property, or any rules that you have that are required, like, oh, you need to submit an ID to me before you access a property, that's all not acceptable anymore. Those are all policies that are all banned. That is a big change, right? And so, are there workarounds? Yes, we can talk about some of them, but that's important to know. You can't do anything between the time of booking and the time that the guest shows up that would prohibit them from now accessing your property, like requesting more money or more information or anything else like that, right?
My understanding, actually, so my understanding was, I think one on the fee side, yeah, definitely. I think we're aligned there. On a PMS system, I think you get a little bit more control. But I think that there was an FTC rule about junk fees in hospitality, and I think going to clean it up. And candidly, I wish they would just do it with the airlines too, because that's just like the worst booking experience. You have every 21 fees after you actually buy the ticket. If you want to be first in line or second in line, third in line, and that's a whole different topic. But on the guest ID check, from what I understand, and I think this is important because a lot of buildings now, or a lot of OTAs, there's just requirements on making sure they actually have, like, they know the person that's going in there and have some sort of background screening. My understanding was that if you disclose that, it's still okay. So you're saying it's not okay anymore?
No, there's a carve out for it. There's an exception carved out, which is that if it is required by law, they use the words by law in the jurisdiction that you're in, then it is okay to use the guest information that well, there's two things actually. So they specify, number one, they specify that you cannot ask for additional guest information using their channels to do anything, aka screen anything that would prevent the guest from staying. What they don't say is you can't use the provided information. So if you can screen using their phone number, name, and proxy email address, they don't specifically prohibit that, number one. Number two, or information that you get from a chat, for example, they don't prohibit that. Well, they just say you can't ask for additional information to screen. However, they do make a carve out specifically for jurisdictions where that's required by law. What is a gray area right now, and I'm imagining that, especially based on the timing here, as you notice, these regulations were announced, about 10 days ago, and they're not going into effect until May 10th. That is because they are allowing for public discourse and pushback to happen so that they can figure out where they may have overstepped or may have gone a little bit too far, right? So one area that is
comment period
pushback, and this may be an area, right? It may be specifically that if you're in a building, it's not required by law, but it's required by your landlord or required by the building owner to have an ID or something of that nature. That may be a loophole that they permit. And now all of a sudden, guess what? I mean, now that gives you more flexibility and say, well, look, I own the house. My insurance company requires for my policy that I collect IDs. So I'm now in the loophole. That is something that I think is fairly likely to happen. I think they're likely to be able to relent on that specifically.
I really hope they do, because these are, a lot of these properties are people's retirement fund, right? It's their most valuable asset, and I think to completely prohibit someone to have some basic security measures for their property, so you know who's coming in. There are instances where a host will book for someone else that comes in and it's not them. Like, it's just really important that they keep that in mind from a host perspective, from a property owner's perspective. This could be your most valuable asset, and you want to make sure that the person that's going in there is someone that isn't a criminal or has on a sex offenders list or something like that, right? And then instead of for New York, in New York, you have there are very specific rules in New York about how to rent out your property, right? You can only rent rooms, and in rooms you can't have a lock on the door, specifically for New York City. Now, I mean, that's a very scary proposition. Say you are you live alone and you have Airbnb house guests come in, there's no locks on your doors, and you can't really make sure that they are who they are, and they don't have a record or things like that. So, um, I think it's something that they should think through more. There's a lot of edge cases where complete ambition that I don't think is great for. It's just from a public safety perspective. Not I don't think it moves. This has been a great conversation. We've covered a lot of topics, and you're one. I feel like you're a lawyer because you're very precise in your language and how you read the copy, or you have a great legal team there. So kudos to Futurestay and on really understanding the rules and how to navigate that on behalf of us as a community and behalf of your clients. I do want to kind of close the conversation now as we kind of talk about you building your business the last 10 years. You're doing the entrepreneurs in the space. I mean, just from your business journey, what's one of the kindest things that someone's done for you as you've grown Futurestay, that you look back and like, wow, man, I'm really glad that this person did this for me, and it's really helped impact business and help grow Futurestay?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the reasons why I'm in this industry, why I kind of settled in this industry, I was a technology generalist and entrepreneur, is the hospitality industry is not just that in name only. It's full of people that are welcoming and loving and are really giving of their time and giving of their advice and guidance. I think for me, one of the moments that really stuck with me is my first customer at Futurestay. When I was building this really just for myself, we started kind of word of mouth about it, and certain people would find us online and kind of sign up. And the thing that was crazy is it was an early product. We didn't know what we're doing. I'm saying it was like myself and a co-founder. We had like no real team at this point in time. We had raised no money, and we were doing this kind of just for fun. And customers would find us, and then they would be like, your product sucks, let me help you fix it. Let me tell you about what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And we learned a lot about the world outside of like my own one little rental, my own urban rental, which was so different than her rental, my first customer's rental, which was a really almost like a bed and breakfast, like multiple floors that you could rent out in the same house, and they were all separate units on Airbnb. And every single customer has that journey of trying to figure out how to take short-term rentals and turn them from an asset that either they have or they believe they can access to something that helps transform them their life financially. And so for me, it's just like being a part of 100,000 individual journeys like that. And it's kind of the most inspiring thing to me, just seeing how we can be a small part in changing people's lives, and they can keep helping us change ours and help keeping us on the right path with Futurestay. It's this like massive, amazing, positive feedback loop that I love, and I don't think I'll ever give up.
Yeah, that's and I'll speak just personally. It's made such a material impact in my life. Short-term rentals, and great technology that you and your peers within this space have built. It's allowed me to quit my investment banking job. Be able to provide for my family, be able to provide a retirement. A path towards retiring my wife and I as our kids grow, and we could kind of enjoy the later years in our lives. And short-term rentals have been such a blessing for me personally, and the fact that we can share this on this podcast and we can share it within the clients at Futurestay. And if you're looking for a great property management system that can help you really optimize your your direct listing, I highly encourage everyone to take a look at Futurestay and see if it's a great fit. But just broadly speaking, the technology part is such an important piece. It's evolved so much since I started in 2017 to now. Like, you really can manage your short-term rental portfolio remotely. I live in New York. All my properties are outside of New York, and able to utilize technology to both save your time and also make more money. So if you haven't explored a technology solution, highly advise look out there, see what fits best for you, and definitely take a look at Futurestay to see if that's something that that works well within your portfolio. So Phil, what's a great way for people to reach out to you or to learn more about Futurestay?
Yeah, they can follow us on any social media. So, LinkedIn, you can follow us at linkedin.com/futurestay. You can follow me at LinkedIn. Philip Kennard is how you spell my name, Kennard. Same thing on Instagram, or they can just email phil@futurestay.com and they'll get me directly. I'm always happy to jump on calls. People are always surprised when they see me on customer calls. I try to take at least one customer call a day, just so I can stay connected and always hear what our other rentalpreneurs are thinking about, what's on their minds and what's happening in the industry.
Perfect. We'll drop a link to that in the notes and to the Futurestay website. So folks, as you are exploring different technology options, definitely take a look and reach out to Phil if you have any questions. Phil, thank you again for spending time with me today. Really enjoyed the episode together, learned a lot. Thank you for the tip on the billboard effect. That's something that I'm going to implement immediately today. Have my team implement it immediately. I think that's a great advice, and I want to thank you for sharing that with us.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you for having me. Definitely, it was a great conversation, and I'm going to follow up with you in exactly 4 weeks. And I want to hear a report on your direct bookings after implementing the billboard.
Yeah, I got to get it above 3%. We got to get. I want to get it. I'm going to double that this year if we can. For folks, if you're listening here today, thank you very much for joining us on YouTube, or you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I encourage you to leave a comment if you have any questions, so we can, answer any questions you have about Futurestay or any other or any of the episodes that we've published so far. And again, if you found this valuable, please do share with a friend. And we want to continue to share the message on short-term rentals and its profound impact that it can have on your life and your family's life. So everyone, thank you for joining us.